We've been spending several months in the Gospel according to Matthew. Last week, Peter made the astounding, outrageous, unbelievable statement that Jesus was Messiah, the Son of God. And Jesus orders his disciples not to tell anybody what they've just discovered. And we pick up the story in the 21st verse of the 16th chapter. From that time on, Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and undergo great suffering at the hands of the elders, the chief priests, and the scribes, and be killed, and on the third day be raised. And Peter took Jesus aside and began to rebuke him, saying, "God forbid it, Lord, this must never happen to you." But Jesus turned and said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block for me, for you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things." Then Jesus told all of his disciples, "If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it. For what will it profit them if they gain the whole world but forfeit their life? Or what will they give in return for their life? For the Son of Man is to come with his angels in the glory of his Father, and then he will repay everyone for what has been done. Truly I tell you, there are some standing here who will not taste death before they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom." This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Max Anders, in his book, The Good Life, tells the story of Gary Richmond, a new zookeeper to the Los Angeles Zoo. Gary was told that he must be constantly vigilant because the safety of the visitors to the zoo and the safety of the animals was at stake. For the first few months of his job, Gary was the model of vigilance. And then, as happens, one day when he was tending to the polar bear, his vigilance slipped. This massive bear, named Ivan, was easily the size of 3 large men, and he was the most dangerous animal at the zoo. He tried to maul anybody who got close to his cage, and he had already killed 2 female polar bears. Well, Gary, this particular day, unlocked the door of the cage and let Ivan walk out into the sunshine, into his enclosed outside area. But Gary forgot to close and lock a doorway at the opposite end of the hallway. If the polar bear happened to go that direction, through that door, Gary's only escape would be cut off. Well, the bear was enjoying his morning stroll in the sunshine, but he always paced the same amount of time in the same pattern every day. And soon the polar bear would finish, and if he noticed that the door was opened at the far end, he would go through it, and Gary would die. Gary thought in a split second that if the bear did not alter his routine one bit, he would have about 17 seconds in which to run down the hallway, close, and lock the door. When the bear made the final turn in his amble in the sunshine, Gary sprinted down the hallway. He reached the door only to see the bear looking straight at him. He pushed the door closed, quickly locked it, and then collapsed in that adrenaline collapse that you get when you've got everything pumping in your body. And as he sank to the floor, he looked up, and there was the bear right there looking at him from the other side of the glass. I guess the advice to be constantly vigilant took on a new meaning for Gary Richmond that day, don't you? Life calls for vigilance. One little letdown can get us in a whole lot of trouble. Jesus was vigilant. He faced temptation throughout his life. Remember when Satan tempted him in the wilderness? There's 3 temptations. Well, at the end of that story in the Gospel of Luke, it says, "And when the devil had ended every temptation, he departed from Jesus until an opportune time." And in a few minutes, we will pray a prayer that Jesus taught us to pray, which says in it, "Lead us not into temptation." Jesus knew from experience that life has its snares. The tempter is always present, and we need God's help if we are to avoid the dangers of temptation. About 25 years ago or so, maybe even 30, a man by the name of Jesse Williams filed a lawsuit against his former employer, Anheuser-Busch, in Tampa, Florida. Williams' complaint was that the company supplied him with the regular employee's allotment of 4 free cases of beer every month, and then fired him when he became an alcoholic. For Jesse and countless others, temptation equals alcohol. For others, temptation is a little tiny piece of plastic. It's so easy to buy when you don't see the bill for 30 days, and then you have another 30 days in which to pay it. And if you don't get that paid off and your credit card goes up to its limit, well, that week you're sure to get another flyer from a company coming straight to your mailbox that says, "Take out my credit card," so that you can pump it up to the limit. What tempts me may not tempt you, and what tempts you may not tempt me. For each of us have our strong points, and we also have our weak points. Life calls for vigilance. Temptation is always with us. Yet the ability to resist temptation is one of the greatest skills we can acquire. Are you familiar with the marshmallow experiment? Anybody familiar with this? It's a great story. Researchers invited 4-year-olds, one by one, into a very plain room, seated them at a table, and put one marshmallow on the table, and said, "You can have this marshmallow right now, but if you wait until I get back from running an errand, I will give you 2 marshmallows." Then the researcher leaves. Well, some of the children grab that marshmallow, and it's in their mouth right away, as soon as the researcher leaves. Others last a few minutes. They kind of look at it, start salivating, and grab it, and in their mouth it goes. Others are more determined to wait. They cover their eyes, they put their head down, they sit on their hands, they sing a song, anything to make the time pass so that they don't pick up that marshmallow. And when the researcher returns, they give the children the marshmallow that's on the table and a second one, because it was hard earned. Well, then science waits for the children to grow up. When the children reach high school age, they contacted the children's parents and their teachers. Those who, as 4-year-olds, had the fortitude to hold out for the 2 marshmallows, generally grew up to be better adjusted, more popular, adventurous, confident, and dependable teenagers. The children who gave in to the temptation early on were more likely to be lonely, frustrated, and stubborn. They shied away from challenges and buckled under stress. When the children in the 2 groups took the SATs, the Scholastic Aptitude Test, the kids who held out longer scored an average of 210 points higher. children who grabbed the marshmallow right away. The ability to resist temptation, to delay gratification, to control one's urges is one of life's great skills. Life calls for vigilance. Temptation is always at hand. And there is one temptation that towers high over every other. The greatest temptation in life is to accept less than the best God has for us. In our lesson this morning, Jesus is telling his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem, suffer, die, and on the third day, rise to life. And Simon Peter takes him aside and says, "God forbid it, Lord. This should never happen to you." And Jesus says, "Get behind me, Satan. You're a stumbling block. You're thinking of human things, not divine." Jesus acknowledged that the tempter was still testing him. The great temptation for Jesus was to forsake the mission to which God had called him. Forsake the conflict. Forsake the cross. Sisters and brothers, that is our greatest temptation as well. God has created us in the divine image and placed within us dreams and abilities, and that God has placed us in a world where certain jobs must be done if God's world is to function as it was designed. The saddest thing we can do is to squander our lives by ignoring the God-given potential that lies within each of us. We are called to be co-creators with God. We are called to be agents of God's kingdom. We cannot settle for anything less than giving our very best for the world, the one for which Jesus died. You see, the tragedy of the other temptations that come to us in life, substance abuse, shoddy financial practices, in my case, overeating, whatever it is, the tragedy is that they deflect us from the work that God has called us to do. We settle for less than the best God has to offer. Bob Hodges, a Presbyterian pastor in Tennessee, tells a story about duck hunting with his friend Riley, who had recently given his life to Christ. And Riley has a lot of questions and is talking to his good friends and sharing with him that Riley's friends before he became a Christian always tried to tempt him to get back into those old habits, those old ways of life that are Christian. And Riley says, "Why is it that I'm having more trouble since I became a Christian than I ever did when I was lost? Everything seems to go wrong. I'm having such a struggle." And Reverend Hodges says, "A couple of ducks fly over, and you shoot. You kill one, you injure the other, and they both fall into the lake. What do? Well, you go and pick up the ducks. But which one do you go after first?" "Well, that's easy," Riley said. "I go after the injured one first. The dead one isn't going anywhere." To which Hodges replied, "That's the way it is with the devil. He goes after injured Christians. He's not going to bother with the dead one, the one that's dead to sin. But the minute you give your life to Jesus, you better get ready. For temptation will be there. The devil's going to come after you and chase you and make it hard on you." You see, life calls for vigilance. There are temptations out there that would destroy us if we let them. Jesus looked temptation in the face and said, "Get behind me, Satan." Those are words for us to remember when we are tempted to turn our back on our life's calling. When we are tempted to turn our back from following Jesus. Remember those words. Get